So, I have never taken guitar lessons or studied guitar. I have just watched YouTube videos to learn songs that I want to know how to play for a long time. And I think because of that, I've never shaken the feeling that actually I don't play guitar and I don't know how to play guitar. Compared to maybe other instruments, like I studied classical piano, or like I played saxophone in the school band. Um, and I feel like I can say like, oh, I know how to play piano, but I've never gotten over this feeling that I feel like I don't know how to play guitar. And I think guitar is actually a really weird instrument, despite its ubiquity in commercial music. And the guitar is reluctant to reveal itself to the player. It's just a really cryptic, weird instrument. And when you're trying to learn guitar, you start picking up, like when you hear people talking about guitar, if you're like hanging around professional guitarists and you hear things that they say about it, and you're listening, you're like trying to go, I want to know the secret. I want to know how this instrument works. And you'll hear some things like, oh, guitarists don't play music, they play math. Or, playing guitar is playing geometry. And that's become kind of true for the way I play guitar. Like, I've had a lot of fruitless endeavors in the past. Like, literally trying to learn the fretboard like it's a keyboard, where I memorize every string and every fret and I know what every note is. And that's just been a total failure for me. Like, I think there are professional guitarists who play like that. If you're in an orchestra pit for like a Broadway and someone drops a piece of sheet music in front of you and you have to read it and play it, I think there are people who can do that. But it's been a little less helpful for me. And the thing that a lot of guitarists talk about is shapes, which is why people talk about geometry and stuff. And basically our ability to move these shapes. So, where should we begin? Everyone learns their basic chord shapes at the beginning. Like, this is where I started, right? Like C, G, E minor, A minor, D, and then F. Oh God, are we gonna learn the bar chord? Like, it hurts. Or you can play less notes, but maybe you can get your thumb over, and that's hard too. And then the next phase of playing guitar is you're just stuck with your hand here. You know, you're just like, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. And you're like, what is this for? Because you have no idea how to use it. And you just see people like shredding and stuff, and you're like, okay, maybe that's what you learn after your root position chords. And then I think a lot of people, the next thing they go into is their bar chords, which is like, oh God, the bar chords. And you can play this, like, okay, so now we're using this part of the neck. So we feel a little bit more like we are real guitar players and we know how to play guitar. But bar chords are really hard. And I think there's a lot of other things you can do with the neck besides bar chords. And I learned that through learning other people's songs. I think another thing that happens at the beginning of playing guitar, when you're learning all these like root position chords and then learning bar chords is you're just always playing every single string. You're playing huge, lush, 6-note chords every time. And that's another thing where spending time learning songs, I just realized like a lot of my favorite songs are not doing that. They're not playing these full 6-note chords all the time. They're playing other shapes, and they're playing shapes that can move around. So, how much do I want to talk about in this video? So, I think if you're learning guitar, like it totally makes sense to learn these shapes down here at the bottom of the neck. Like we can take our C major chord and I'll make it to where I play all the strings. And we can start to listen to those notes individually. And I think it's a really worthwhile endeavor to just take every finger on and off. So let's start with our ring finger here, like, ooh, that one sounds nice. And then we can try the next finger. Ooh. That's also kind of satisfying. And then we can try our index finger. Ooh, that has a nice quality too. And then we have our bass string. Can we not play that? Like we can use our thumb and mute it and get a different sound. And maybe we can even get a new note. Like, so we can jump our pinky here and have a free finger. Let's try that fret. Oh, that's also a nice quality. We could also add something down here. And if you're doing this, you're playing like C major 7 or like some kind of C sus. And that's cool to learn, but like I think eventually you're just gonna be playing shapes and you're gonna be like, oh, that's a shape that I know and I like that shape, and you'll be able to play it in different places on the neck. So yeah, I think another great thing to do when you're learning these like root position chords, so you have this shape, right? Play it on every fret. So shift. Ooh, not sure about that one. Let's go one more. Wow, that is nice. And now we can go back and forth. And I don't think you have to even know at this point like what chord that is, other than I like it and it sounds good. Maybe later you can learn a little more music theory and learn a little more about chords, and you can get some language to talk about what that is. But I think that's kind of it inhibits you at the beginning, like that you have to know what you're doing. When I think the guitar is so like cryptic and hesitant to reveal itself, it's much better to learn by intuition and your ear and what sounds good. So we have like, wow, that sounds cool. And I'm just moving a shape. And let's keep going. I kind of like that. Ooh, because it's got that. Okay, so I think our favorites there were probably just and those were nice chords. And then if we remembered removing our fingers, like that one sounds kind of nice when we lift off that finger. So now we can move that one. Ooh. That sounds cool. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Wait, what is it? So it's on that dot, right? So. And when you do this, you're utilizing a lot of the guitar's open strings, right? If you only learn bar chords, like, what's the Mitski song? I mean, that has its place, but the open strings are kind of a feature of the instrument that give it its kind of characteristic sound. So I think it's good to kind of lean into that and have like dissonances in your chord that come from open strings. So play different chord shapes. And find things that sound interesting to you and add that to your vocabulary of shapes and things that are nice. Yeah, I think that's a good insight for getting creative on guitar and learning how to play guitar. Okay, the next thing is a little bit more music theory oriented. Sometimes when people are learning music, they're like, oh, I need to learn scales. I don't know why we learn scales. I hope my piano teacher, rest in peace, doesn't hear me say that. It's pretty rare that you're listening to music and you just hear like a straight up scale, like from tonic to tonic. I think there are probably better ways to practice scales so that they're more like usable. Like I feel like Nare Soul has videos about that. She's great. Scales are whole steps and half steps, right? So a whole step is 2 frets on the guitar. A half step is 1 fret on the guitar. And each note in the scale is referred to as a degree of the scale, right? First degree, second degree. And when you build chords on these scales, which I just said are not important, when you build chords on these scales, your chords will generally be major or minor. And the majorness or minorness of the chord is defined by the relationship between 2 notes, the root and the third. So the root gives it the name, like a G chord, that's G. And then G can be major, which is defined by the third of the chord. In this case, that note is called B. And if we lower that third by a half step to B flat, we get G minor. So G major, G minor. And right now I'm playing that interval with my low E string and the G string, which itself is a minor relationship. So how does this relate to scales and how unimportant they are? you can pick your low E string and choose any fret you like. Let's choose this one. And then let's make a major shape. So in the major shape, our G string is 1 fret higher, right? And then we can like arbitrarily go up by whole steps or half steps. So flip a coin, whole step, okay? So we're gonna go. And then we could also make our next chord minor. So, and do we think that sounds good, right? Or you can do major, major. You'll notice if we just keep going up major, 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 actually it's kind of cool, but it's maybe a little more dissonant, so we often kind of alter between major and minor, like that's a sound that we're all very familiar with. Maybe the one that was all major was actually kind of cooler. Ooh, like that was kind of interesting. So, I think it's really worthwhile to take a shape, like the major shape and the minor shape, and move it to different positions on the fretboard. And then, can you do it twice? And can you find things that you like? And most likely, you are playing in some kind of scale. If it sounds pleasing to your ear, you know, those kinds of biases and prejudices and things that you think sound good or bad come from your culture. And music theory is just a description of that culture that already exists in your head. You know, it's all just meta language. It's like learning grammar, you know, like you don't need to know what the subjunctive tense is to write a poem. Maybe someday it'll be cool to learn that stuff and play with it, but I don't think you should feel like, oh, I can't play guitar until I know music theory or something. And I think music theory can even be restrictive to your creativity, this idea that, you know, there are things that have to be this way. I mean, just like with language, like so many of the lyrics that we love, you know, contain like grammar mistakes or whatever. Because it comes from language, right? And language is organic and evolves. And then we just retroactively try to impose some rules on it. And then as we become a little more enlightened, we stop calling them rules because, you know, that all comes from like politics and class and stuff like that. Power. Yeah, so the major minor thing. You can see I've got the scales pretty much entrenched. You can learn other shapes as well. Like you can learn this same relationship between your A string and your B string. Major, minor. The spacing is different by a half step because of the interval difference between G and B. Maybe someday it'll make sense. So I'm trying to not do a scale. And then you can start mixing that interval with some of the open strings, right? Like, ooh. And now you're also learning how to improvise, and you're becoming confident that whatever you play doesn't have to be something you learned, which I think is really good, because so many people live with this fear of improvising. Like, oh no, you have to be like so good to be able to improvise. But the reality is you just get to be bad at improvising in the beginning, and then you get better. There's never like a jump to suddenly being good at improvising. And yeah, you learn shapes, move the shapes on the neck, play them with different open strings, and eventually you learn more shapes. Like one of my favorite shapes is this one. And in this chord, the major minor third is in the bass, so we switch from major to minor. And it's so nice to play this around like. So you do like a nice chromatic walk down, like. Yeah, you're just having fun. You're just trying stuff. Okay, maybe that's enough for now. Play shapes. Play them in different places. Find what sounds good to you. And whatever sounds good to you is your artistic voice. And now we're using the whole neck, right? Like when you just only know these reposition chords, you're just locked in here. Learn songs and learn shapes from the songs that you learn, and then move those shapes and try them in different places. And eventually you will start to have the feeling like, maybe I know how to play guitar. Okay, ta-ta.